was meant to be just harmless April Fool's fun, but when the tourists tried to trip the royal guard on duty, what happened next froze the entire crowd in silence. Want to know how it all unfolded? First, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from. That being said, let's get into it. The April sunshine bathed Windsor Castle in a golden glow as tourists gathered along the cobblestone paths, cameras ready to capture the iconic sentries in their scarlet tunics and bearskin caps. Among the sea of visitors, a tour group of 8 Americans stood out, not just for their matching blue baseball caps, but for the boisterous laughter that repeatedly drew disapproving glances from nearby families. "Remember, guys, no holding back today," announced Ben, a stocky man in his 30s with a goatee and sunglasses perched on his head. "It's April Fools, and these guards are fair game." He gestured toward the motionless royal guard, standing at attention near the castle entrance. "That's not a soldier, that's a tourist attraction in a funny hat." The others in his group laughed nervously, exchanging uncertain glances. They had joined this tour expecting historical insights into British monarchy, not a test of how far they could push ceremonial boundaries. "Ben, maybe we should respect their traditions," suggested Rachel, a middle-aged woman clutching her guidebook. "The pamphlet says these guards are actual soldiers with combat experience." Ben waved dismissively. "Come on, they're glorified mannequins. If they were real soldiers, they'd be doing real military stuff, not standing around looking pretty for our photos." He pulled out his phone, already scrolling through camera filters. "Trust me, nobody takes this seriously except stuffy Brits." 20 yards away, Sergeant William Hayes stood at his post, his eyes fixed forward with the discipline earned through 12 years of military service. At 34, Hayes had served 2 tours in Afghanistan and 1 in Iraq before earning the honour of representing the King's Guard. The scarlet tunic he wore with such precision wasn't a costume, but a uniform steeped in over 3 centuries of tradition. Behind his stoic expression, Hayes had already noted the American group. Years of battlefield awareness meant he could track potential disturbances without betraying a flicker of attention. He'd seen their type before, visitors who mistook ceremonial duty for theatrical performance, military discipline for robotic indifference. "Look at him," Ben Stage whispered, loud enough for Hayes to hear. "Bet I could make him crack before lunch." The group followed Ben toward the guard post, several members already lifting phones to capture whatever spectacle their self-appointed leader had planned. A British couple nearby pulled their children aside, recognizing the warning signs of disrespect about to unfold. "Do you think they even breathe?" Ben asked his companions as they approached. "Or do they wind them up each morning and set them out like clockwork toys?" Hayes remained perfectly still, his mind briefly recalling his drill sergeant's words during guard training. "Your stillness represents the unwavering protection of the crown. Your silence speaks louder than any reaction." As the April morning progressed, the atmosphere around Hayes's post shifted. Regular tourists maintained respectful distances, but Ben's group edged closer, their intentions growing clearer with each passing minute. "Perfect lighting for some memorable shots," Ben announced, positioning himself beside the immobile guard. "Everyone, get your phones ready. This will be the highlight of our England trip." The group gathered uncertainly around Hayes, whose scarlet uniform stood in sharp contrast to their casual tourist attire. Ben struck an exaggerated military pose beside the guard, mimicking Hayes's stern expression while his friends reluctantly took photos. "Now let's get creative," Ben urged, pulling up filters on his phone. "Check this out. Royal Guard goes K9. He snapped a selfie with Hayes in the background, adding animated dog ears and a tongue to the guard's dignified face. The screen displayed the soldier's solemn expression, now ridiculously adorned with cartoon features. "Man's best friend, guarding the castle." Several group members laughed despite themselves, emboldened by Ben's apparent immunity from consequences. A woman named Melissa stepped forward hesitantly, then took her own photo with a filter that placed a clown nose and rainbow wig on the guard's bearskin cap. "I feel bad," she whispered to another group member. "This seems disrespectful." "It's just harmless fun," Ben overheard, slinging an arm around her shoulders. "Look, he's not even human while he's on duty. More like a really impressive statue. Besides, it's April Fool's, the one day where nothing counts against you." Hayes remained motionless, but his peripheral vision registered each disrespectful image. Throughout his military career, he had learned that discipline wasn't the absence of feeling, but the mastery of it. Behind his impassive expression, he noted the group's escalating behavior with the same tactical awareness that had served him in conflict zones. "Now, this one's gold," Ben declared, showing his phone to the others. He'd edited a photo to place Hayes's face on a cartoon body in a tutu. "Royal Ballet Guard! Who says the monarchy doesn't have a sense of humour?" A middle-aged British woman nearby audibly scoffed. "Absolutely shameful," she muttered to her husband. "No respect whatsoever." Ben heard and rolled his eyes dramatically. "Don't mind the locals. They're just born without funny bones." He turned back to his increasingly uncomfortable tour group. "Come on, people. Get those creative juices flowing. These guards are literally paid to stand here and take it." Paul, the oldest member of the group, stepped back. "I think I'll just observe the castle architecture instead," he said quietly, distancing himself from what was unfolding. "Suit yourself, Grandpa," Ben called after him. "More fun for the rest of us." A castle staff member in a navy blazer approached, her expression professionally neutral, despite the tension evident in her stance. "Excuse me, sir," she addressed Ben directly. "I need to remind you that the King's Guards are serving military personnel deserving proper respect. While photography is permitted, mockery is not." Ben flashed what he clearly thought was a charming smile. "Just having some April Fool's fun, ma'am. No harm intended." "Nevertheless," the staff member continued firmly, "I must ask you to maintain appropriate behaviour while on castle grounds." Of course," Ben agreed with exaggerated politeness, waiting until she moved along before turning to his group with a conspiratorial wink. "Guess we'll have to be more creative with our approach." The reluctant members of the group exchanged worried glances. Jennifer, a teacher from Oregon, whispered to Rachel, "I'm starting to think we should split off from the main group. This doesn't feel right." "Ben promised the authentic British experience," Rachel replied uncertainly. "I didn't realise that meant potentially getting arrested." Meanwhile, Sergeant Hayes continued his watch, his posture perfect, despite the growing discomfort of the situation. His mind briefly flashed to his training commander's words. "Your uniform represents every soldier who has ever worn it. Their honour is your responsibility." Around the scene, other tourists had begun giving Ben's group a wide berth, creating a visible bubble of space that separated proper visitors from what was increasingly becoming a spectacle. Parents guided their children to other viewing spots. Couples found reasons to move along, and tour guides redirected their groups to different areas. Ben, misinterpreting the thinning crowd as an opportunity rather than a warning, pressed on with increasing audacity. "Let's see if we can get an action shot," he suggested, moving closer to Hayes. "These guys supposedly never move, right? That's their whole thing." The remaining group members followed with visibly diminishing enthusiasm, their initial amusement fading into discomfort as Ben's behaviour crossed into clear disrespect. As midday approached, he gathered his dwindling entourage behind a stone pillar, his expression animated with misplaced excitement. The morning's harmless fun had apparently only whetted his appetite for more significant boundary pushing. "All right, team, huddle up," he commanded, his voice lowered but vibrating with poorly contained enthusiasm. "I've been saving the main event for now. This is going to be legendary." The 5 remaining group members, 3 having already departed for souvenir shopping, formed an uncertain circle around their self-appointed leader. Jennifer fidgeted with her camera strap, clearly uncomfortable, but unwilling to abandon the tour she'd paid for. "So what exactly are you planning?" asked Derek, a college student whose initial enthusiasm had steadily waned with each escalating antic. Ben's eyes gleamed. "April Fool's is about the unexpected, right? So here's what we're going to do." He leaned in conspiratorially. "These guards have one job: stand perfectly still no matter what. They're trained not to react to anything, but everyone has a breaking point." "Ben," Rachel interrupted, "the staff already warned us once." "That's why we need to be coordinated," Ben pressed on, undeterred. "I've researched this. These guards can't move unless there's a genuine security threat. It's literally against their rules." He pulled out his phone, showing a crudely drawn diagram. "We're going to create a diversion. First, Melissa and Jennifer start taking photos from the left side. Derek and I approach from the front, doing our exaggerated marching routine. While he's focused on us, Rachel casually walks behind him and pretends to trip, extending her foot just enough to seem like she's trying to trip him. Shocked silence followed his proposal. "You want us to try to trip a royal guard?" Jennifer asked incredulously. "That's not a prank, that's assault." No, you're missing the point," Ben insisted, his voice taking on an edge of impatience. "Nobody's actually going to touch him. Rachel just creates the impression she might trip him. The whole point is to make him flinch or break character. It's psychological, not physical." Derek shook his head slowly. "I don't know, man. These guys aren't street performers. They're soldiers." "Ceremonial soldiers," Ben corrected, with unearned confidence. "It's all theatre. Trust me, the worst that happens is we get another stern talking to, and we've got an awesome story to tell back home." As the group reluctantly discussed logistics, Sergeant Hayes maintained his unwavering vigilance at his post. Though he couldn't hear their conversation, his years of military training had attuned him to the behavioral patterns of potential threats. The furtive glances, the huddled conversation, the occasional pointing in his direction, all registered as tactical information, processed and categorized with battlefield efficiency. Hayes had served in Helmand Province, where reading body language wasn't just protocol, it was survival. The group's behavior wasn't threatening in the combat sense, but it carried the distinct signature of coordinated action. His mind briefly recalled standing guard during diplomatic meetings in Kabul, where the ability to anticipate disruption before it materialized was as crucial as responding to direct attack. Behind his impassive expression, Hayes mentally prepared for whatever misguided plan was forming. His training had prepared him for far worse than tourist pranks, but the sacred duty of his position demanded the same level of readiness he'd maintained in combat zones. Meanwhile, Ben had moved from persuasion to instruction, assigning positions with the misplaced authority of someone who believed himself immune to consequence. "Remember, timing is everything," he emphasized. "We all need to play our parts perfectly. Jennifer and Melissa, you'll need to be really obvious with your photo taking to draw his attention. Make it overly touristy, peace signs, big smiles, the works." "I'm really not comfortable with this," Melissa stated flatly. "Disrespectful photos are one thing, but this—" "It's April Fool's," Ben repeated, as if the date itself provided blanket immunity. "Besides, these guards are literally trained for people testing them. It's basically expected." Around them, the courtyard had continued its normal tourist rhythms, though several castle security personnel had begun maintaining closer proximity to Hayes's post. The morning's behaviour hadn't gone unnoticed, and the security team had quietly increased their vigilance without direct intervention. "We go on my signal," Ben instructed, checking his watch. "The changing of the guard isn't for another hour, so we have plenty of time to execute the plan and disappear into the crowd afterward." As they dispersed to their assigned positions, Rachel lingered behind, genuine concern etched across her face. "Ben, maybe we should reconsider. That staff member seemed pretty serious about the rules." "Rules are made to be bent on April Fools," Ben replied dismissively. "Trust me, this will be the highlight of our trip. Everyone back home will be jealous they missed it." With reluctant nods, the group moved into position around Hayes's post, a web of misguided intention forming around a man who had faced genuine threats in places where pranks were unthinkable luxuries. The trap closed in with uncomfortable precision as Ben's plan lurched into motion. Jennifer and Melissa positioned themselves to the left of Hayes's post, cameras raised with exaggerated tourist enthusiasm. Derek approached from the right, his reluctance visible in every halting step. "Perfect," Ben muttered, watching his choreography unfold. He straightened his baseball cap and began a loud, theatrical approach toward the guard. "Attention!" he barked in a terrible British accent, performing an exaggerated military march. "Royal inspection underway!" Nearby tourists paused, sensing the unfolding disruption. A family with young children quietly redirected their tour away from the scene. Two elderly British veterans, observing from a bench, exchanged knowing glances of disapproval. Hayes remained motionless, his training allowing him to track multiple movements simultaneously without betraying awareness. His peripheral vision registered Ben's performative approach. Jennifer and Melissa's uncomfortable photography, Derek's hesitant positioning, and, most significantly, Rachel's casual maneuvering toward his rear. "I say, good man, your boots could use a proper shine," Ben continued loudly, his mockery drawing stares from passing visitors. "The king would be most displeased with this slovenly appearance." A castle security officer began moving toward the scene, speaking quietly into his radio. The atmosphere had shifted from tourist curiosity to palpable tension as more visitors recognized the boundary being crossed. "Derek, your turn," Ben called out, maintaining his theatrical persona. "Show the good sergeant how proper military bearing is done." With visible reluctance, Derek approached and performed a clumsy salute. "Sorry about this," he muttered under his breath, just loud enough for Hayes to hear. Meanwhile, Rachel had completed her circuitous path and now stood several feet behind Hayes. Her discomfort was evident in her rigid posture and uncertain expression. "Now, Rachel," Ben commanded, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "Show us that dramatic fall you practiced." Rachel hesitated, looking increasingly unsure of her role in this ill-conceived performance. "Ben, I don't think—" "It's April Fool's, just do it," Ben insisted, his voice sharpening with impatience. "Trip and extend your foot. He won't actually fall. He's trained for this." The security officer quickened his pace, but before he could intervene, Rachel made a half-hearted attempt at following Ben's directions. She moved closer to Hayes, pretended to stumble and, with visible reluctance, extended her foot slightly behind the guard's perfectly polished boot. It was a weak execution of an already misguided plan, but the intention was unmistakable. Gasps rippled through the watching crowd. The elderly veterans rose from their bench in indignation. Parents covered children's eyes. For a heartbeat that seemed to stretch into eternity, Hayes remained perfectly still, processing the attempted disruption with combat-honed calculation. Then, with mechanical precision, he pivoted 90 degrees away from the potential trip, simultaneously bringing his ceremonial rifle to a perfect diagonal across his chest. The movement, executed with the precision of thousands of hours of drill practice, was not the reaction Ben had anticipated. Rather than stumbling or breaking character, Hayes had simply adapted his stance while maintaining absolute military bearing. "He moved!" Ben crowed, as if this constituted victory. "We got him to break position. April Fools, your Majesty's finest." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the ambient tourist chatter seemed to have been sucked from the spring air. In that stillness, Hayes executed another perfect pivot, this time facing directly toward Ben. His expression remained professionally neutral, but his eyes now fixed directly on the group's leader, with an intensity that made Ben's triumphant smile falter. "Sir," Hayes spoke, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had commanded men in combat, "you are interfering with a king's guard on duty." The simplicity of the statement belied its significance. For Hayes to speak while on duty represented an exceptional circumstance, a breach of protocol justified only by genuine security concerns. "It speaks," Ben attempted to joke, but his voice cracked slightly, betraying the first hints of understanding that lines had been irrevocably crossed. "Sir, step back immediately," Hayes continued, each word measured and precise. "Security personnel are approaching to escort you from the premises." By now, 3 security officers had arrived, positioning themselves strategically around the group. The senior officer stepped forward, his expression leaving no room for misinterpretation. "That's enough," he stated firmly. "You've been warned about appropriate behaviour. I need all of you to come with me now." Ben's bravado began crumbling at the edges. "It was just a joke," he protested, looking around for support and finding none. "April Fools, you know. Nobody got hurt." "Attempting to trip a king's guard is a criminal offence," the security officer informed him. "Not a joke. All of you, please follow me to the security office. The Metropolitan Police have been notified." As the group was escorted away, Rachel looked back over her shoulder at Hayes, genuine remorse etched across her face. "I'm so sorry," she called out, her voice small in the vast courtyard. "I didn't mean to actually." "Save it for the authorities, ma'am," the security officer interrupted gently but firmly. "This is now a police matter." The security office contrasted sharply with the grand historical architecture of Windsor Castle. Modern, functional, and decidedly unroyal, it served as the sobering backdrop where Ben's group now awaited the Metropolitan Police's arrival. The April sunshine that had earlier bathed the castle grounds in golden light was reduced to thin strips filtering through narrow windows. "This is ridiculous," Ben muttered, slouched in a chair against the wall. "It was just an April Fool's prank. Nobody actually got hurt." The senior security officer, who had introduced himself as Mr. Patterson, looked up from his paperwork. "Intent matters, sir. Attempting to trip someone, anyone, crosses a line from prank to potential assault. When that someone is a king's guard on duty, it becomes significantly more serious." Before Ben could respond, the door opened to reveal Sergeant Hayes. He had been temporarily relieved of his post following the incident, standard procedure when a guard was forced to break protocol. He had exchanged his ceremonial rifle for a clipboard, but otherwise remained in full uniform, his bearing no less military within the confines of the security office. "Sergeant Hayes will take your statements individually," Patterson explained. "The police will want his account of events when they arrive." Ben straightened slightly, a defensive posture replacing his affected slouch. "So what exactly are we being charged with? Making a guard move? Is that even a real offence?" Hayes regarded him with the steady gaze of someone who had faced genuine threats far beyond tourist misbehaviour. "Sir, I broke protocol not because of your actions, but because they represented a security concern. Attempting to trip a guard on duty creates a potential vulnerability in castle security." "It was just a foot," Ben protested weakly. "Nobody was actually going to touch you." "Intent matters," Hayes repeated Patterson's earlier words. His voice remained measured, neither angry nor condescending, simply factual. "Before standing on that post this morning, I completed 12 years of military service, including 3 combat tours. The uniform I wear represents that service, and the service of every soldier who has worn it for over 3 centuries. Something in Hayes's calm delivery silenced Ben more effectively than any shouting could have. The group sat attentively as Hayes continued. "Each King's Guard you see at royal residences has earned their place through actual military service. Before taking ceremonial duties, I served in Helmand Province, Afghanistan, and in Iraq. Many of my colleagues wore this same uniform in combat before wearing it on ceremonial duty." Rachel looked up, genuine curiosity replacing her earlier embarrassment. "So, you're not just ceremonial soldiers?" "No, ma'am," Hayes replied. Every guard on royal duty is a fully trained infantry soldier. We rotate between operational duties and ceremonial roles. The bearskin cap you see isn't a costume. It's part of a military uniform, first earned in battle against Napoleon's Imperial Guard at Waterloo. The room fell silent as this information sank in. Jennifer glanced down at her camera, the disrespectful photos suddenly seeming profoundly inappropriate. "I genuinely didn't know," she admitted quietly. "I don't know what I thought." "Many visitors don't understand," Hayes acknowledged without condemnation, "which is why education is as important as consequences in situations like this." He turned a page on his clipboard, his movements disciplined even in this administrative task. "The medals on my uniform aren't decorative. This one," he indicated a ribbon on his chest, "was awarded for actions during my second tour in Afghanistan. My platoon came under heavy fire while protecting civilian evacuees." Ben's expression had transformed completely, the cocky bravado replaced by something approaching genuine respect. "You've actually been in combat?" "Yes, sir. Most of us have. The precision and discipline you see in ceremonial duties comes from operational experience, where such discipline is a matter of life and death." Derek leaned forward. "So when we were trying to make you react, you were using the same discipline you used in actual war zones?" "Correct," Hayes confirmed. "The stillness you attempted to disrupt is the same composure that keeps soldiers alive under fire. It's not theatrical, it's tactical." A knock at the door announced the arrival of the Metropolitan Police. 2 officers entered, nodding to Hayes with the subtle respect of one professional acknowledging another. "We'll need statements from everyone," the senior officer explained. "Attempting to interfere with a King's Guard on duty falls under several possible offences, including potential assault and causing public disorder." Ben straightened, finally grasping the gravity of his prank. "Look, we made a huge mistake. I made a huge mistake and pressured everyone else. I had no idea these guards were real soldiers with combat experience. I thought it was all ceremonial theatre." "Ignorance doesn't excuse the behaviour," the police officer replied, "but your cooperation now will be noted." As the group prepared to give their statements, Rachel approached Hayes directly. "Sergeant, I want to apologise personally. I let peer pressure override my better judgment. When you were forced to break your stance to address us, I felt truly ashamed." Hayes acknowledged her apology with a slight nod. "The uniform teaches us that respect isn't about being liked, ma'am. It's about upholding standards that have meaning beyond oneself. That applies to those wearing the uniform and those encountering it." One by one, the group members provided their statements, each interaction with Hayes revealing another layer of understanding about the tradition they had so carelessly disrespected. What had begun as an April Fool's prank had become an unexpected education in military service, royal tradition, and the consequences of mistaking dedication for performance. By late afternoon, the situation had reached its conclusion. Ben received a substantial fine and a formal police caution, a permanent mark on his record that would follow him back to America. The others received formal warnings, their cooperation and evident remorse considered in mitigation. "I never thought April Fools could end with a police record," Ben remarked soberly as they gathered their belongings. The bravado that had animated his morning performance had evaporated completely, replaced by genuine contemplation. "I came to England thinking everything here was just pomp and pageantry for tourists. I couldn't have been more wrong." "We all were," Jennifer agreed, deleting the disrespectful photos from her camera with deliberate finality. "When he talked about his combat experience, I've never felt so small." Outside the security office, Mr. Patterson provided them with information about the castle exit and the conditions of their release. "Your tour group has moved on," he explained. "You're free to leave the castle grounds, but not to return during your stay in England." As they made their way toward the exit, they passed the spot where Sergeant Hayes had returned to his post. His posture was immaculate, his gaze forward, his discipline undiminished by the day's events. Another guard had joined him, the changing of the guard having occurred during their time in the security office. Ben paused momentarily, observing Hayes with new understanding. The scarlet tunic no longer seemed like a costume, but a uniform earned through service most tourists could never comprehend. The stillness no longer appeared theatrical, but disciplined. The composed vigilance of a soldier whose training transcended ceremonial duty. "I didn't just disrespect a tradition today," Ben admitted quietly to his companions. "I disrespected actual military service. That's something I'll have to live with." As they continued toward the exit, the group walked in contemplative silence, the lesson of the day etched more deeply than any tourist attraction could have managed. Behind them, Sergeant William Hayes continued his watch, his composure unbroken, his dedication to duty undeterred by those who had failed to understand its meaning. What would you do if you witnessed tourists disrespecting a royal guard? Would you intervene or keep your distance? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever learned an important lesson about respecting traditions or military personnel while travelling? Share your experiences. We'd love to hear how these moments changed your perspective. If this story made you think differently about the men and women behind the ceremonial uniforms, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories that reveal the human side of traditions we often take for granted. Don't forget to press the bell icon so you never miss our daily uploads. Share this video with friends and family planning to visit historical sites where respect for tradition matters. Check out our other Royal Guard stories appearing on your screen right now, and we'll see you tomorrow at the same time with a brand new video that will both entertain and enlighten.